step pyramid complex. Get your pictures now of the, if you want, of the pyramid. You have the famous step pyramid here, which is again the first pyramid in chronological history, dating back to the 3rd dynasty, which is roughly 2640 BC forward. Again, we were at Giza yesterday. This predates Giza, and one of the interesting things you'll notice here, often you'll hear all the oldest stones are at the beginning. Not always the case, because we have an example here where we have usage of smaller stones. You'll find that the stones are emulating organic features. Prior to this, they would be mud brick mastabas, and you know, here we're going to see lotiform columns and papyrus emulated in stone, right? In a way, it's almost like a form of sympathetic magic. It's a way of taking organic features and perpetuating it for all time, right? Because a stone is indelible, it's meant to last. So this is, the Djoser Step Pyramid Complex is somewhat unusual. It's a first of its kind, but although it's done in stone, it's replicating an older model that Imhotep had which we won't be able to see on this tour, which few tourists ever see. I have a video coming out about this. Shunit El Zabib, that whole area at Abydos was a similar version of this, but made out of mud brick. So they took that concept, brought it here, did it in the brick. The first 12 feet or so are all original. After that, this is the life work of Jean-Pierre, I have trouble with French, Jean-Pierre Louer. It's his work, it's mostly reconstruction. You'll see that as we go on. You'll notice as we go in, the masonry is so tight, as you've probably seen a million people demonstrate on the internet, all after John Anthony West, by the way. John was the first one to demonstrate this in Surfing in the Sky, how you could take a credit card or a key or your hotel key and put it in between the notches, the masonry, the different courses of masonry, and you won't be able to fit it in. It's that tight. There may be some astronomical features to this, which is eluding us. It's based on the rectangular shape, and also actually one of the interesting stone features we'll take a look at here, very similar to what we seen yesterday at the Khafra Valley Temple. Also, many of you were just on our Peru and Bolivia tour with the depth expeditions, and you'll notice how the masonry sometimes wraps around, how the stone turns, and we'll find another interlocking piece, which they say is for earthquakes, to make it earthquake proof. We talked yesterday a bit about how I myself have a history in the music industry, and we've had many engineers and musicologists talk about how this is conducive to sound, this sound engineering. John Anthony West was of the opinion that it may have something to do with the energy energetically going through the stone, how there's usually no right angles in nature. So it's just like the human body, like say the wrist. Best way of explaining this, the ancient Egyptians had a sense of, their ontology was about animism, right? So they believed that all stone was living stone. Their temples were living stone structures. So if you think about that, it doesn't make much sense in modern times because stone isn't alive, or we don't think of it in those terms, but it would be a lower vibrational frequency. You have the minerals from the mineral kingdom to the plant kingdom. Animals feed on the plant kingdom, humans feed on the animals, and so forth. So if you look over here, you can see an example of the masonry. So you want to look close at the details here. You'll want to bring your camera right up here, and you'll see how this stone is still part of, this is all one stone, how it curves around. So they would have to shave back this stone to make it fit. You guys can get close and take a look at that if you like. And then when you're ready, we'll go in and we'll begin to go over some of the more symbolic features of the architecture inside the Djoser Step Pyramid Complex.
Where it's got like the blocks in it.
You can't get anything in between the stone masonry, which is absolutely amazing.
Notice that the horizontal layers have a little bit of a gap between them, which could have been during the...
Right. Oh, right.
But the vertical one...
I believe it's all limestone, sandstone, limestone. Yeah, it's
We have people here.
Name is the great
Adapt expedition.
limestone.
You think it's limestone?
I think so. Sahila, is limestone?
Of course.
Yeah,
This is
it's all
limestone.
limestone.
One of the best
Most of it,
qualities
yeah,
of
most
the
of it
baby
was.
is
It wasn't until like the Middle Kingdom that they stopped using sandstone. So this is the Old Kingdom. Mostly everything was done in limestone, and then sometimes you'd have a granite interior. Now, when you come,
Your
Very
half of your
great
group
crowd.
is still out.
Wow, look at these features up here. Everyone want to come in, and then once you come through the doors, we'll turn around and fix our gaze up here. So first, if you notice in the corridor as you're coming up, you have the reproduction of what would have been wooden beams done in stone now. So in fact, my home in Luxor, my first home in Luxor, had the same thing but made of wood. They still had like the wooden ceiling logs going across. These would have been like the date palms that you see as we came in. So organic vegetation now emulated in stone to be indelible for all eternity, supposedly. And then you'll notice the symbolic double doors, almost like the old Western movies, where you go through the swiveling door. If you look up above, they have the door sockets. It's faithful replication right down to the door socket. Then when we come over here,
Take advantage of nobody's here. You're looking at this corner.
the ceiling is not original. This is reconstruction. So basically, everything from here over is reconstruction for the most part. And these right here, excuse me, these are known as, for the Egyptologists, archaeologists, it's called engaged columns. Yeah. So the engaged columns, they say they didn't know the load-bearing capacity, as if the Egyptians didn't have that understanding. But what's interesting here, one of the features is that you'll notice as we begin our number symbolism, if you count these up, you're going to have papyrus and lotus. I'm sorry, not lotus. It's early in the morning. You're going to have papyrus stalks. This is again replicating organic matter in stone. But if you count up the stalks, it's going to come to 17. From a theosophical point of view, you would take the numbers 1 and 7. 1 is undifferentiated consciousness, the absolute, before it becomes aware of itself. Everything is one, all is one. 7 is the number of cyclical renewal, regeneration. There's probably 7,777 correspondences to 7. You have 7 days of the week, 7 colors on the visible scale.
7 skies.
7, yeah, every 7 days is going to give you 1 week. 7 colors, you're going to have the 7 music, yeah, everything is in 7s. 7 chakras, 7 psychic centers, all to get to a new level, a new octave. You always have to go through a process of 7 in order to reach a new octave. 1 and 7 you put together. So that's here, and then at the end you'll notice there's a few columns that are 18, 1 and 8. Which
9.
It's 9, but when you take 1 and 8, it's also the number 18 is the day that Osiris, what was it? It's attributed to Osiris. Was it his death? I think it has to do with death, I forget. And it was a Roman anagram, but basically it was a way of symbolizing that you're coming from a place, you're coming from the everyday, mundane, profane world, you're coming into sacred space. Everything beyond these walls is sacred space. This was a necropolis, a burial area in a sense. Saqqara is a necropolis. So you're moving from the world of the living to the dead. But there was actually a lot of life and action here. As we go through, we're going to go into the Hepsed Festival Court, and that's where an initiation process took place.
And also, if you move in slowly and quietly through this, try to sense it, because this is...
It's very important because, as author Freddie Silver often points out in his work, there's bands of discharges of negative and positive currents. On my old esoteric Egypt tours, before the authorities would take away my dowsing rods, we would practice with dowsing rods walking through here, and almost every time, I actually prefer pendulums over dowsing rods. I find them more effective, but when you use dowsing rods, you'll notice they open in and out as you go through each of the bands. So energetically, there's something to be said here that may be missed by modern academia. On the other hand, just even from a visual point of view, you'll notice it's almost like an optical illusion as it's closing in. And this is the first place where you find a colonnade. This is like the world's first colonnade like this. And it's also, if you count up the numbers, it matches the number of gnomes in Egypt.
Oh,
Yeah.
when you go in, John used to say it's like a guitar strings.
Yeah.
So it's like a music, and it's
You're walking through a musical instrument, almost like when we discuss when my new book is about the Adept Initiate's Guide to the Luxor Temple, experiencing the temple through an esoteric symbolist approach. You're going through the body of man at the Luxor Temple. Here, John would correspond that to the idea of going through a musical instrument. It's like going through the guitar strings. So we invite you, as we walk to the end, walk slowly, quietly, ceremonially, and just take it in, and know that the repetition on your side view has an impact. It's the same as when you're going down the Avenue of the Sphinxes in Luxor, or even in Asia, how there's different recurring motifs. $18 up front. It's actually 19. The last ones at the end are 19, not 18. And the reason for that, why 19? In Kabbalah, 19 is a number, we could say, of spiritual activation, for those of you that are familiar with Kabbalah. And it also has to do with the lunar cycles of the moon, which in relation to the sun, this has a cycle of 19. So if you count these up, it's 19. So 17 in the beginning, all the ones were 17, then we have 19. So we're gonna continue our esoteric number symbolist study, more so as we go to Luxor and start going into the temples, but I just wanna start training you up in a sense to start looking at the temple in different ways. We're gonna be examining how the light impacts things, color, number, going beyond just our traditional, and also intuitively, you wanna feel things intuitively, but we wanna look at everything from an esoteric perspective, because for the ancient Egyptians, nothing was done haphazardly. Everything was done with intention. They just didn't randomly make the organic matter 17 in the beginning and 19 here for no reason at all. So here we're about to enter soon the Hepsed Festival Court. We talked about even the very word esoteric, eso meaning inner experience, teric coming from the word terrier, which meant festival, and it was at the festivals where the secrets were communicated. What do we mean by secrets? This is where the teachings of the mystery schools, universal principles and laws, and learning how to live in harmony with them, how to engender them within, to connect with the divine, because ultimately that's what it's all about. The purpose of purpose of life for the Pythagoreans and the Pythagorean mystery school was to understand that you're an extension of the divine, you're a mirror of the divine, and you're living that experience. So the king, the king would go through, they say, a coronation. First and foremost is a big courtyard, and they would say that they'd run around and they'd chase the bull's tail and get the tail. We'll show you that as we go on in relief. It was all part of the Hepsed Festival ceremony. However, scholar Jeremy Nadler, he's done amazing scholarly work on this, demonstrating how these festivals had to do with initiation and the initiatory process. So the king would go through this whole living resurrectional initiation. It would take 3 days. And so, and the whole thing is detailed. Again, we don't have time to get into every aspect, but you can look into Jeremy Nadler's work. Effectively, the king would go, when we're going to go over there. Now, a lot of people refer to this as a healing hospital. That's not entirely correct. We have absolutely no evidence to suggest it's a healing hospital. This actually comes from the work of Hakim Mayawan and what they tell people, but we don't know it as a healing hospital. We know it as a Hepsed Festival Court. There is an aspect of healing that you could consider, tonally. We'll show you, we're going to experiment. When we enter, we're going to enter quietly, and everyone's going to have an opportunity to put their head inside of the niches and experience for yourself. and then there's a platform there, and so there's some stories. I challenge you, anyone that thinks it's a healing hospital, to actually find the evidence to show us it's a healing hospital. Just because somebody says something, you know, or anything you read, you can't trust everything you read. It was written by another human. So what we do know, all the textual evidence, is that the king used this for his coronation, which was effectively an initiation process to prove that he was worthy to continue connecting with the divine, effectively being a shaman, being an intermediary between the divine and the people for all prosperity for Egypt, for abundance for Egypt, to bring everything back to the land. So we'll go examine that in just a moment. Just know that you are in sacred space, and again, we are truly privileged today to come here as tourists and be able to traverse these grounds, because in ancient times this wouldn't be available to the uninitiated. This would be for the initiated priesthood, the king himself, and so it's very special. This is very potent, in a sense, even we could say magical experience.
So
magical
in classical dating, this is supposed to be, it is the first complete stone structure
Yep.
in Egypt, and yet
Oldest stone structure in the world, really.
yeah, and
Of this
most
size.
probably it's 2300 BC, and you see the lines like those buckets of the dried plants.
Yeah,
They
it's
are
one-
all equal, and the lines are equal, and it's tapered just right. You know what I mean? And of course, this is the ugly adding we did, but it was roofed. You see, there is a little bit restoration here to show you. It was also raided like this, like the palm logs to roof over the vegetation or those columns.
You can see some of the original retains still up. So the ceiling itself, this ceiling is modern restoration, but just up above there, there's a piece of the original that's left above the columns.
There, inside,
you
where
go.
David is. Yeah? So, again, looking back, I'm very glad that we went in and there was no others, so you felt and you enjoyed going through the strings of the instrument. We are the instrument as well.
Yeah,
So-
effectively you are an instrument.
So
The
let's go.
papyrus stalk, one last thing, the papyrus stalk, if, you know, again, this isn't supposed to be stone. It is stone, but it's replicating the organic matter. If you go into the delta, if left unchecked, they grow to extreme heights. So this is all supposed to be, you know, like plant vegetation. You'll see more of this when we go to Karnak and Luxor. It's thematic. It's as if you're going through the swamp in the delta with, you know, all the lotus,
The beginning
papyrus.
of the creation of the world,
Yeah.
where before creation,
And we'll
the
talk more about
swamps.
it at Karnak, because that's
Yeah.
where it's really most effective.
Let's
Right
go
this
up
way.